time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
So I want to go over just a couple more things that are actually kind of tied into the RFK thing, because we absolutely have a problem with chronic long-term disease in this country, do we not? Is there anybody who doubts that? Like, everybody understands that, right? And again, I don't care how you live your life. I'm not in a position to judge anybody. I don't really care. I think that if you're happy, that's all that matters. If you're happy with the way that you look, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I am going to take a stand on this notion that if you're happy with how you look, but you're 300 pounds of chewed bubblegum, that you're healthy. You're not. When I was 50 pounds heavier, I wasn't healthy. Period. That's all there is to it. Now, you can be overweight and like the way that you look and be comfortable in your skin, and there are people who are really attracted to that, and that's okay. But let's not pretend that that makes you healthy. I don't do the updates on the fat acceptance models dropping dead because I want to shame you over your weight or your health. I do it to point out that they told you that they were perfectly healthy, and then they're dead at 23. That's my point. CNN promotes that. MSNBC promotes that. When CNN, in their discussion with Jennings about RFK Jr., when they go out there and they tell you it's misinformation that caused 1 million people to die. No, it isn't. Not from RFK's side, anyway. You know what caused people to die? Telling everybody that doing things that were basic things that they could do over the counter, like taking vitamin D3, magnesium, zinc, would help you fight COVID. Not telling them that, or telling them that that was a lie. When medical doctors who had treated hundreds of COVID patients came out and said, we found a cocktail that works. We haven't had a single person die since we started using this. And for several hours, they did this press conference nationwide, and they were summarily ostracized. Their medical licenses were almost stripped. They were, air quote, fact-checked by people who had never treated a single patient in their entire lives. And they were completely ridiculed by CNN, by the CDC, by the World Health Organization, who told you that COVID could not be spread from person to person to begin with after they already knew it could. And you're supposed to trust them? By the way, for those of you who are new to the show and didn't listen during COVID, that's a factual timeline. The World Health Organization told everybody that COVID does not spread between people, and that the COVID cases in China were isolated and were because of contact with animals, except a World Health Organization official, about a month later, they admitted that they could be spread from person to person. But then months later, a World Health Organization official during a news press conference pointed out that they did in fact know that COVID spreads from people, from person to person, between people. And they knew that a month before they made the announcement that it doesn't spread between people. So why did the World Health Organization lie to you? That wasn't a mistake and it wasn't an accident. It was a lie. Ask yourself why that was. Now, again, this is where the tinfoil comes out, okay? Again, the evidence makes sense. There's a massive depopulation movement in these organizations. And there is a very significant part of me who is wondering if maybe that was a part of it. So back in June, we had a peer-reviewed study came out that said COVID vaccines likely have contributed to an unprecedented 3 million excess deaths in the Western world since 2020. We keep finding excess deaths everywhere. Just in April, Alberta, Canada, is recommending COVID boosters. April of this year, guys. COVID boosters every 3 months. Every 3 months. That's 320 COVID shots. There's no scientific research behind that. None. Not a single one. The largest COVID vaccine study that has been done up until this point shows that there are small increases in neurological, blood, and heart-related issues. Okay? Peer-reviewed study, 2024, COVID-19 vaccination is strongly associated with serious adverse safety signals of myocarditis, particularly in children and young adults, which is what, again, all of the research has shown from the very beginning. Before the vaccine was rolled out for the general population, we were telling you that it was an issue for kids because that's what it showed in the testing. Friendly reminder, Pfizer lied in their data that they gave to the FDA. They told you it was 97% effective. That was a lie. It never was. They didn't tell you about the people who died in their study, in their trial, before they got their emergency use authorization. They didn't include that. They didn't tell you about it. They didn't tell you about the people who had long-term serious side effects. Not, I got a boo-boo where the injection is. Long-term serious side effects. They didn't tell you about those. That all came out. You know why it came out? Morgan, do you know why that came out? Because a judge ordered the FDA and Pfizer to release the documents. You remember what the FDA was trying to do at the time? The FDA was trying to say, we'll release the documents that we approved within 2 weeks. So we read, we reviewed, we approved within 2 weeks everything that Pfizer said in their research. And we'll release it to all of you, but we need over 70 years to do it. Hey, Morgan, does it make any sense to you as somebody who's a casual observer here? Does it make any sense to you that the FDA was able to read through, assess, and approve an emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine within 2 weeks, but yet they say that they can't get you the same thing that they reviewed in 2 weeks for 70 some odd years? Does that make any sense to you? Does that seem like they're hiding something, Morgan? Oh, that's right. They were. They were hiding people died. That's what they were hiding. You know who told you that was a lie before it came out? CNN. You know who's still telling you that? CNN. It's in Pfizer's own documents. It's not a blog conspiracy. The excess deaths that dweeb was talking about on CNN when he was attacking RFK and Jennings for defending RFK as the appointment. The people who died were the people who were told to go on ventilators when they were told directly when COVID was brand new in March. Don't put anybody on a ventilator. They're dying. You know who told Dr. Fauci that to his face? To his face. Dr. Rand Paul, who was, again, ostracized and demonized. Guess who was right? And we had doctors, we had nurses, we had everybody coming out and going, when people go on ventilators, they don't come off of them. We need to stop putting people on ventilators. It is killing COVID patients. Guess what we ended up Hey, Morgan, guess what we ended up finding out in 2021? People who were put on ventilators died because the ventilator killed them. Not COVID, the ventilator did. So while you're out there saying that, misinformation from people like RFK and Casey Hendrickson caused these excess deaths, no. The CDC, the World Health Organization, all of the news media, all of the politicians that push this nonsense, that prevented you from hearing about over-the-counter solutions that you could boost your immune system with overnight to help give you a fighting chance. Then you had, of course, all of the non-over-the-counter solutions that work really well that they then demonized. Remember, CNN is the organization that manipulated Joe Rogan's skin color to make him seem sick when he took ivermectin. Then, of course, you've got the masking situation. Nonsense. Absolute total nonsense. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, any other social media platform, they all forbid anybody from giving you information that could have saved your life. And instead, they gave you information that killed people. And now they want to blame RFK? No. Absolutely not. You know what's in the news today? Right here in our own community. For those of you in the Michiana area, you know what's in the news today? Unusual cases of hospitalization among young people. Oh, really? Specifically in St. Joseph County, teenagers are staying in the hospital longer than usual. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about this. And I spoke with somebody in the medical field today who has I think, a pretty strong theory about it. So I'll tell you what's going on. Coming up on The Burning Truth. It's pretty sad when you still have idiots running around telling you to mask up, when even the most prominent health officials at the time were telling you to mask and double mask and triple mask, and the New York Times telling you to put on 3 or 4 masks. And those people who pushed that and were the faces of tyrannical government pushing that, they now say that masking was wrong, that masking was bad, that masking hurt their children. And you still got dweebs out there still going, oh yeah, masks. Yeah. You don't know anything at all about basic science here. None. Absolutely none. Do you remember that person that called up the show one day and they were like, okay, Casey, we're reopening. I got to go back to work. I think it was a grocery store. They're requiring masking though. And I was like, okay, so I'm assuming this is about safety, right? And like, yeah. I said, here's what you do. You go to a military surplus store and you get yourself an Israeli, usually they're like Czech, or you don't get the Russian ones all that much, but like the Czech ones. You can get Israeli, you can get Czech, you can get old NATO masks and get the carbon cartridges that go with them. Now, they're still all fully functional. Guess what? That's the only damn mask that works against COVID, guys. Nothing else works, okay? That's the only one. The only one. And I said, you go in there wearing one of those. There is zero way that they can tell you a nuclear, biological, and chemical mask doesn't work on COVID. And so you're going to say, if you're going to require me to have a mask, I'm going to have the one that works.
Did I tell you that I was a swim teacher after COVID came back? Did I tell you that?
Not me, but I know somebody. Did they do it?
I had to wear a mask while I was teaching in a swimming pool. You could wear the face shield and a mask, or just like the clear plastic face shield. But yeah, I had to wear a mask inside of the swimming pool.
Oh my God. So I told him, I said, go get one of those. I said, I will bet you money. Report back to me. I said, I'll bet you money. If you do that, they'll tell you to take it off because you don't want to scare the customers. But you can put the little cloth thing on that doesn't work under the guise of safety, right? So anyway, right here in St. Joseph County, and this is all over the country, but this is just from WSBT in St. Joseph County. Pediatricians across the nation are seeing a rise in cases of Mycoplasma pneumoniae. And in St. Joseph County, teenagers are staying in the hospital longer than usual. Quote, it's specifically Mycoplasma pneumoniae in this age group, which Mycoplasma is what we call an atypical pneumoniae. So not the bacteria that we normally expect to cause pneumonia. And so it is more common in that age group. And what we're seeing is that number seems to be a lot higher than it has been in years past. And that's other physicians' experience throughout the nation as well. Now, that is Dr. Karen Davis, a pediatric hospitalist at St. Joseph Hospital in Mishawaka. Okay? So They went out, they talked with other people, we're definitely seeing an increase in these patients. So this particular type of infection causes inflammation of the lungs, causes the body to feel that there is an unfriendly object that needs to be removed. Ugh, that's annoying. You ever have that feeling? Ugh. It's just really annoying. Symptoms include wheezing, coughing, sore throat, sore chest. You good, Morgan? You all right? This you? That's what they think it is?
That's what they thought I had.
This is what they think you have?
Yeah. The pneumonia.
Really?
Yep.
If you are experiencing fever-like symptoms that persist, you should see a doctor. If you're not getting better, if you're getting worse, you should really go put a call into your physician. Okay. All right. So what they're saying, they're seeing this more in young people, particularly teenagers. So I reached out to somebody in the medical field that I know and that I trust. And I was like, what's your take on this? This is usually something that most kids build up their immune system against while they're young. Honestly, I feel like we're still in this like post-COVID refractory period where in the last 5 years, we've seen a drop in those common diseases and illnesses that we used to see because of masking and isolation. And now I feel that it's a combination of that. More people are unmasking. And again, we're doing activities that put our children in close proximity to each other. But now with the weakened immunity to things that previously wouldn't have been a huge deal. And it's a false narrative with the increasing numbers because we're still in this post-COVID refractory period. It sucks. It's our reality. Until herd immunity is achieved again, these things will continue to pose an issue. Hey, who are the people that were telling you that you were going to jack up immune systems for years to come? Oh, that's right. See, I would like to tell you that it was me and RFK, but it wasn't. It was actually medical professionals and the research who were saying it. We were just providing a voice for those who were resisting the narrative and actually trying to save lives. And how many of you out there have children who are still dealing with the repercussions of being isolated for some of you 3 years? You know, they're calling them the lost generation already. And many of them are just now getting into their 20s. And RFK Jr. is the problem. There's one more thing. I got to tell him that other thing, too, when we come back. There's one more thing. I'm going to tell you. You're going to pull your hair out. We got more coming up. You're tuned into The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
You know, one of the other ways that they, like CNN, the CDC, and everything else, actually increased deaths, while RFK did not, one of the ways that they did was telling you that young, healthy people, particularly young male athletes, needed the vaccine and had to have the vaccine, or else they couldn't go to school, they couldn't participate in sports, what have you, couldn't travel, even though we had tons of evidence at the time that it caused issues with myocarditis. And then we started seeing professional athletes dropping dead everywhere. Anybody who did a cardiovascular intense sport had death rates right after the vaccines higher than they had ever had in that sport's history. Most famously in professional soccer in Europe. And they tried to come out and tried to tell you like, hey, people die in the soccer field every year. Yeah, 1 or 2, not 30. Very unusual. So yesterday, literally yesterday, New York Post, COVID-19 cover-up claims swirl after a whistleblower reveals that the disease blueprint may have been wrongly classified, which led to the Department of Defense having a flawed probe of the pandemic's origins by U.S. intelligence agencies because it was wrongly classified. And this, you know, you've got a military whistleblower who found this thing, Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Murray. Okay, not some private, not some lance corporal. This is a lieutenant colonel who, for the record, currently runs the Marine Corps' warfighting lab in Quantico. So this isn't like some idiot dweeb. In July of 2021, he discovered that the unclassified grant proposal known as Project Diffuse had been uploaded to a classified portal. He then notified his chain of command, the Diffuse proposal, which has since been cited by scientists as a smoking gun, that COVID was in fact engineered in the Wuhan Chinese lab because it came from China. So glad Trump's back. I can't wait for him to say that word. Every time he says that word, it's just good. So it had been uploaded to the classified portal. He notified his chain of command because of this. Despite being unclassified, in the final Office of the Director of National Intelligence report on the virus's origins that was released in August of 2021, this was missing. So he found this in 2021. The report came out the next month when he found it. And because the blueprint was, well, miscategorized, the entire Defense Department's assessment of the origins in 2021 was wrong. We now know it's wrong, but back then CNN was telling you, it came from soup. No, it didn't. Hey, guess what else came out yesterday? Just literally yesterday, University of Minnesota. COVID Omicron deaths 3 times higher than for flu, but risks for severe cases were similar. Remember when they tried to tell you that the flu was more deadly for children than COVID? And then they banned you from social media for saying it, even though the CDC's own data showed that? How many times did I get banned or suspended from something for literally linking to the CDC's own data, guys? For those of you who were with me through COVID, how many times? Rates of in-hospital death and intensive care unit ICU admissions were similar among adults hospitalized in Switzerland with healthcare-linked COVID-19 or influenza infections during the Omicron variant predominance. Well, isn't that interesting? The absolute number of COVID-19 deaths was 3 times higher than those from the flu, but the case fatality ratio was comparable to COVID-19. Now, for those of you who might be just, pro-COVID oppression here, includes a lot of you Republicans, what that means is more people died from COVID than the flu. However, the death rate is about the same. COVID was 6.2. The flu was 6.1%. But you were also told that that was a conspiracy and a lie. And people like me and RFK Jr. were not telling you the truth. This came out yesterday, guys. This is the University of Minnesota. Just yesterday. So according to this research from the University of Minnesota, that was published at least at the University of Minnesota, that dealt with hospitalizations and deaths in Switzerland, COVID-19 during Omicron and the flu basically had the same fatality rate, mortality rate, death rate, however you want to phrase it. After adjustments, patients had a comparable subdistribution hazard ratio for a 30-day in-hospital death. Oh. Similar percentages were admitted to the ICU. 2.4% for COVID, 2.6% for the flu. Statistically the same. Wow. That just came out yesterday. Hey, CNN talking about how it turns out that the flu, at least in some stages of COVID, was just as bad for adults. Are they talking about that? No, of course not. I'm going to tell you something right now. And this came out today. And I'm telling you, you're going to flip your lid when I tell you this. This is in Live Science today. Today, just over 3 hours ago. Immune cells produced during severe COVID-19 infection may shrink cancer tumors. The unexpected mechanism offers a new therapeutic possibility for advanced and treatment-resistant cancers. Do you understand what I just said? Severe COVID can cure cancer, they say. RFK Jr. is the problem? Really? Really, CNN? Because they're floating out there telling you that that COVID might cure cancer? Not just any cancer, like treatment-resistant cancers. Great. Today, 3.5 hours ago, this story got published. RFK Jr. is the problem. Huh. Yeah, good questions on the live stream and Rumble. Hey, where did the flu go in 2021 and 2022? Yeah, great question. I mean, I would tell you what the doctors told me, but I still might get banned. Nah, I won't. I'm on Rumble and on X, so I won't get banned. Just today, folks, severe COVID infections can kill cancer cells. Gotta love it. All right. We do have Marlin Stutzman, former congressman from the 3rd District, and the future congressman from the 3rd District, because he's going back to the House of Representatives. He's going to be up at 5 o'clock. I was not planning on talking about this at all, let alone this long, to be perfectly honest. But, yeah, I went down a rabbit hole, but I think it was worth it. I haven't really talked about COVID in a long time. There are a lot of updates on it, and I peeled away from it for obvious reasons. So coming up, I'm going to talk to you about Advance Auto Parts, which is another business that Barack Obama and Democrats have killed off. We got more coming up on The Burning Truth. COVID kills cancer. Somebody posted in the live stream like, hey, didn't we hear that COVID causes cancer too? Yeah, we did. We did. In fact, it's, what do they call it? It's not super cancer, but it was like some additional, like, really scary word. But, so COVID causes a super cancer, and it also cures a super cancer. Yeah, RFK Jr. is the problem, guys. So Barack Obama did a lot of stupid things. And I know that some of you older folks who thought that you're going to be voting to end the argument of racism in this country and are sorely disappointed that you were not rewarded with your sacrifice by voting for an idiot. And those of you who are young who are fed this delusion by, well, we'll just call them revisionists, and since that seems to be a word this week, about his presidency. Which, by the way, includes Joe Rogan. He's like, he's one of the best presidents ever. No, he wasn't. He was a terrible president. Actually wasn't very good at much of anything. And a lot of the stuff dealing with automobiles, major problems. So Advance Auto Parts is now closing hundreds of stores. Fewer people are opting to repair their vehicles. Advance Auto Parts said yesterday that it will close about 500 stores by mid-2025. And cut some jobs under a restructuring effort as demand for vehicle parts takes a hit from fewer consumers opting to repair their cars. The automotive industry has had a difficult second half of the year, burdened by inflationary headwinds and stiff competition from Chinese automakers putting out affordable yet feature-packed vehicles. Now, I was listening to Brian Kilmeade the other day. Brian Kilmeade was even talking about this Chinese electric car that was like really affordable that a lot of people are, kind of worried about. And they were talking about how it's beating Ford sales. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to sell more vehicles than your Chinese competitor as the CEO of Ford if you're driving that competitor's vehicle, as the Ford CEO currently is. And then going on a podcast and saying, I love this car. I don't want to give it up. It's better than anything we make. Wow. I wonder if he's angling for a job over in China. I think maybe the Ford CEO is doing, I don't know. It could be. It's just a weird thing to say on a podcast. So the The company Advanced Auto Parts is going to close 500 stores, which is not a small number. And there's a couple of things that are kind of happening. So one, you had the cash for clunkers bit. And the cash for clunkers bit made used vehicles extremely expensive. Because a lot of the best used vehicles, particularly classics that everybody wanted, got destroyed. Instead of being resold to people who wanted to keep them, wanted to collect them, wanted to restore them, wanted to work on them, and wanted to have a supply of the parts for them. So when they got destroyed, guess what? Companies stopped making those parts. People stopped going to the parts company like Advanced Auto Parts, AutoZone, O'Reilly's, things like that to get those parts. The other thing is obviously vehicles that are newer are made to be more difficult to work on, even beyond the normal 2 to 3 year range, where it ends up being a bit of an issue, because you want to protect the dealership, right? You want to protect the brand. If you're going to work on your new car, well, you're going to have to go to the dealership. You're going to have to get the OEM parts, that sort of thing. You're not going to be able to go to a parts store and just get the part. But the problem is that a lot of the newer vehicles are being created so that you can't work on them, specifically and directly. And oftentimes, some brands, particularly European brands, will design the vehicle to where you can't work on it on your own. You cannot take it to any shop that you want, but you actually have to go to a shop that has a very expensive, very specialized tool. And who has those very expensive, very specialized tools, Morgan? The dealership. That's right. Not your average mechanic out there. The dealership. We're actually seeing a drop in the number of people going into the profession because it is becoming extremely difficult to repair these newer cars. Very expensive, cost prohibitive, that sort of thing. So there's a bunch of things on here. But ultimately, this starts with what happened with cash for clunkers. That started everything. The whole goal is to get old vehicles off of the road and replace them with the new ones. The company is in regulatory filings said that it was planning to close 523 corporate stores. It was going to exit 204 independent locations, and it was going to shutter 4 distribution centers by the middle of 2025. It also flagged headcount reductions and said that it expects 2024 earnings from continuing operations of between a loss of 60 cents per share, or they might, if they're lucky, break even. Now, you could say that this is just one. So it's Advanced Auto Parts. Maybe they're just losing the battle to AutoZone, O'Reilly's, and the others. Napa, maybe. Walmart, places like that are doing these things now. Maybe they are. But in general, I think if you go back and you start looking at everything that happened with cash for clunkers and on since then, well, you start to see a bit of a pattern. And then you got the CAFE standards, which are a mess. That sort of stuff forced the companies to make bigger vehicles. You ever run into one of those greenies out there who's like, why are trucks so big now? You ever run into that? You've heard that, right? You got a bunch of lefty friends, right, Morgan? Why are pickup trucks so big now? You know why they're big now? And they're a lot bigger than they were in the 90s. You know why? Because of your stupid environmental policies that were pushed by your left-wing politicians, you dummy. Because the CAFE standards are directly related, so its emission standards are directly related to the size of the vehicle. Smaller vehicles have more restrictions on their emissions than bigger vehicles do. So because the technology didn't exist to get to the CAFE standards, the automobile company said, you know what we can do? We can just, give some steroids to our pickup trucks and our SUVs and our vehicles, make them bigger, and then the CAFE standards don't affect us as much. And so they made everything bigger to get around the CAFE standards. Everything the environmentalists do, everything that they do causes a new problem. Every single one. Got more coming up. We're going to talk with Marlon Stutzman next here on The Burning Truth.
Podcasts by Federated Media.